Okay, so after having constructed a building, our next step is obviously being able to use that building. And to do that, we need to access that building, right? The whole idea was to create some additional space for the player to interact with NPCs and other objects. So to be able to access a building or to enter a building in Unity, we are going to create a new scene that it's going to be the building interior. So when the player goes into the building, there is going to be a switch of scenes from the exterior, which is the scene that we have right now, that we have been working on so far, and we are going to go into a new space, a new interior scene. To access it from the outside, I'm adding a new element, which is going to be a trigger collider. And when the player walks into that trigger collider, then the new level management script that I'm working on is going to be triggered and is going to switch to a new scene. So here I'm placing the trigger collider in the doors of the building, so when the player walks into it, then he's going to access a new scene. Okay, so I create a new scene and then I need to populate it, and I'm creating a new tile map in the same way that I use a tile map for the exterior scene to draw all the different background elements and the collision layers and all that. So I'm using a very similar pattern here. And for the actual tiles, I'm going to be using another package from the Unity Asset Store. I didn't find exactly what I was looking for, but the package that I chose was kind of a sci-fi looking interior that more or less resembles what I want, and it's good enough for the purposes of testing and giving some ambience to the game. Here I have the basic package, and I'm putting in the description where you can find it in the Unity Asset Store. It's not too expensive and it's versatile, so you can use it to create many types of interiors. It's a little spare, so the first thing that I did was just create like a floor that I'm going to be using as like the general layout of the building. And of course it doesn't have to match exactly the size of the building from outside. It's part of the illusion of the game, like I'm walking into a space that is bigger than the space that I walked into. It really doesn't matter. But here I'm placing the character so you get an idea of how big the building is gonna look from the inside. Alright, so when I have the lever or the floor defined, then I'm gonna put some boundaries into it in the form of walls. Now this package that I got from Unity, the walls are not very inspired. There's not a lot of variety to them. There's some walls that look like doors, open doors, closed doors, but in general there's not a lot of design to them, so they're good enough. Here I'm placing a door that is going to be used to represent the entrance of the player, and this point is really important because you don't want the player spawning just in any place within the layer, right? You want it to spawn close to where you're putting your entrance or your door, so it gives the player the illusion that he's just walking into the same place that he walked from outside. Alright, so here I am putting some walls to break down the space a little bit and give it a little bit more of ambience, right? You just don't want an empty space or a loft, so to speak. You want it to have some design to it. And of course this is a huge topic that you can delve into, and there are many ways to approach it. And in some kind of games like a platformer, Metroidvania, well, most kind of games, certainly tactical RPGs, the level design is a crucial element of the design process, right? In this case, I only want the player to roam around a little bit, to explore a little bit, to be able to interact a little bit. So there is no need for a very elaborate design, a whole arc that an elaborate layout, complicated layout might be even counterproductive for this kind of environment. Like, I want the player to find very quickly the thing that he's looking for. But nonetheless, you can spend hours and hours and hours going into level design and trying to decide how is it going to look like, and bringing the architect within you and experiment in different layouts. And it's really a fun activity to do that. And I'll say that that's one of the things that mostly brings people into game design, right? The ability to be able to design worlds to their liking. One thing that happens is that sometimes you start drawing the walls, the interiors, and then you figure that, okay, I need more space. So you have to go back, delete what you did, and try to make it a little bit more reasonable within the proportions of the game. And this is something that is kind of difficult to explain, but I mean, when you go into a house, you know if the halls are too narrow or if you need more space in the rooms. So it's kind of to give the player a sense of proportionality within the room, right? Not only to make it interesting, but to make it proportional. And here I'm adding some props, of course, to make it like more interesting. Even like you don't want just an empty room. You want to give it some personality. So I got another package from Unity, SCIFI props, and I'm using it to create a little bit more of character within the space. So finally, I got another package for interior furniture like beds and kinds of furniture like living rooms and things like that, because this is supposed to be a barracks. So I mean, it has to kind of look like a place where soldiers will sleep. That's kind of the vibe that I'm going to. And this looks more sci-fi. This looks more like an astronaut space station kind of thing. But I mean, kind of sort of resembles the look that I'm going for. So I'm putting here some furniture to make it more interesting. And if you notice, in the bottom section of the building, there is like a little nook with a laptop and a chair that looks like an office. So that space is going to be for an NPC that is going to be able to interact with the player and give some functionality to this scene. So where the player walks into this building because he wants to get some units, not just because he wants to take a look at the area. No, the area actually has a purpose, and the purpose of that is to actually be able to build an army. Okay, so this is more or less the finalized product, and of course I'm missing the NPC that is going to interact with the player, but I'm going to add that in a later video. Actually, the game already has it and is already working and is way more advanced, but of course it takes me a long time to actually record this footage and then edit it and then publish it, right? So obviously this is significantly behind what the actual progress of the project is. But anyway, now that we have the scene, then we have to write some code to make it work. And basically, I'm not going to go into too much details about how the code is working. Of course, if you want to know, you can always ask me in the comments. But the idea is basically you're going to have a level manager that is going to be controlling the actual switching in the scenes, and you're going to have, in addition to that, a trigger controller that is going to be used in the scene. You remember that we had the little door with a little box collider in there, and that collider is going to be attached to a component that is going to tell it, like, okay, when someone walks into the trigger, then call the level manager and activate the scene management script. And the other piece component of this is another script that is going to be instantiating the player within the new scene, right? Because the player needs to be recreated in the new scene. So now let's take a look how it works all together. Now I'm going to test it, going back to the sign. Then I construct the building and I go in. I'm instantiating correctly, and then I can walk around. Of course, I added collision layers so I can run into things and I just don't walk over them. So that's working pretty well, I think. Yep. and that's it. I think if we go outside, then yep, we go back to the same place in the previous scene where we went. Maybe you notice that the building's gone. That's because the scene is not persisted, but that's a problem for a different video. For now, I'm gonna finish it here.